You know you just watched an all-time great race when, with less than 10 laps to go, NBC had to put up 3 different camera angles on screen at the same time to cover all of the tremendous action tonight. Bristol, baby, back and better than ever. Oh, I love the concrete. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove Bristol Night Race Review Edition. The best track in NASCAR delivers once again. I don't even know where to begin this episode. There's so much to react to. We'll talk about the winner, of course. We'll also look at the playoff grid, the 4 drivers that have now been eliminated after the first round. We'll talk about their nights, what went wrong for them, what went right for other drivers. But I want to begin this video by talking about Chase Elliott versus Kevin Harvick. Clashing generations. One of the youngest stars in the sport against, I think, the oldest full-time driver in the sport. Running into each other on pit road after the race, getting in each other's face, shoving a little bit on pit road after the race. Harvick versus Elliott. You could hear what the fans out in Bristol thought of the whole incident. Obviously favored Chase Elliott, not too surprising there. Kevin Harvick saying, hey, y'all can boo me, I don't care. But we're gonna go back to the beginning of this 1v1 skirmish. Kevin Harvick, rocking that beautiful new Subway paint scheme, was possibly in position, really for the first time all season, to win a Cup Series race, chasing down and battling Chase Elliott in the closing laps. Elliott was doing a really good job running that high line, making it almost impossible for Harvick to pass, but Harvick saw an opportunity in lap traffic, tried to pin Chase Elliott behind a lapped car going down the back straightaway. But going into the turn, Elliott squoze Harvick, made it 3 wide in the middle to try and hold that lead to keep his outside positioning. Kevin Harvick in the center of the corner drifted up the track, scraped Chase Elliott, cut Chase Elliott's tire down. A lap later, Elliott has a flat. He's forced to pit. He ends up finishing 25th, multiple laps down. Kevin Harvick holds on to the lead, but Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott's teammate, closes in. Chase Elliott comes back out on the track and at full speed takes a clear swipe at Harvick. To my opinion, it looks like he was trying to cut his tire down, just slight contact made. Elliott, with fresher tires at this point, was able to stay out in front of Harvick, but he made life miserable in the closing laps for Kevin Harvick, taking his line away, not making it easy on Harvick, allowing Larson again to close and close and close, and ultimately, with just a couple of laps to go, Kyle Larson got the positioning and passed Kevin Harvick for the lead and ultimately for the race win. Pulling onto pit road, Harvick ran to the back, ran to the side of Elliott's car a little bit. Officials were quickly there to try and diffuse it from becoming anything major, but then they got out of the cars, they got in each other's face. Harvick had a fire in his eyes I have not seen in over a decade. You know, growing up, when I was a young NASCAR fan, Kevin Harvick, he wasn't at Tony Stewart levels of wild, but he was just a notch below that. He himself was sort of a ticking time bomb. He was known for getting in people's faces. He got that wild-eyed look from time to time, and you never really knew what Harvick was going to do, what he was going to say. He cursed on TV tonight. That's like 2 of the last 2 or 3 weeks we've had drivers cursing on national TV. Oh, FCC's up in arms. Kevin Harvick looked like he was 30 years old again tonight. He was on fire. He was livid with Chase Elliott after the race. It never really broke out into a real physical altercation. They had their hands on each other. They shoved each other a little bit, but a few moments later, NBCSN cameras caught them in the garage area talking it out face to face with people around, but they were keeping it fairly civil. They actually went into Chase Elliott's hauler apparently to discuss even further. So maybe they're having like a cage match in the lounge inside his hauler, and man, I wish we could see that. But respect to both drivers for dialing it down a little bit and discussing it face to face, hashing it out in the moment, not letting it simmer. We've seen this year smaller incidents, like the little incident between Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson at Watkins Glen earlier this year. Bell didn't respond to Larson's apology text apparently, and so that simmered for a week, and you had drivers with hurt feelings for longer than they maybe needed to. I'm sure Kevin Harvick and Chase Elliott, especially Harvick, is still going to have hurt feelings after this one for a long, long time, but I do respect both drivers a ton for having a conversation before they leave the racetrack, and seemingly having a very in-depth, long conversation. As of the time I'm recording this, they're probably still in that hauler talking it out. As for who's right, who's wrong, I mean, look at the scoreboard. Kevin Harvick finished second. I know that's not the win he was hoping for, and that's part of why he's frustrated, but still, that's a second place run. Chase Elliott finished 25th. You look at what happened on the racetrack, to me, Kevin Harvick was clearly trying to box Elliott in behind the lap car, trying to use that to his advantage. It's a fair move, but an aggressive move. Chase Elliott was aggressive, driving it in really deep, side by side next to Harvick, 3 wide, so that was an aggressive move by Elliott, but Harvick's the one who ultimately slipped off the bottom and got into Elliott and cut his tire down. So, I mean, Chase Elliott got the worst end of that deal. I don't think Harvick was intentionally trying to run into Chase Elliott, but, you know, accidents still have consequences when the other guy gets screwed the way Elliott did in this case. So to me, Harvick was mostly at fault for the initial incident that cut Chase Elliott's tire down, but then Chase Elliott came out on track, took that shot at Harvick, and then held him up and let his teammate win the race. So I don't know that they're exactly even, but I think both drivers got shots in at the other driver before it was all said and done. So they may not be perfectly square, perfectly even, because again, Chase Elliott finished 25th, but both took shots at each other. That's probably why they were both so angry with each other after the race. You know, in some incidents, it's clear that one driver's wronged another driver, and so usually the anger is mostly one-sided. But in this case, I think the anger was pretty equal because both drivers feel like, I don't know, in a way they feel like they're even, but not even at the same time. That's terrible analysis, but that's how it feels. Again, it's really interesting though, because Chase Elliott's like, what, 25 years old? Harvick's like 45 years old. Like, he could be Chase Elliott's dad. Clashing generations, but again, ton of respect for both drivers talking it out, you know, albeit animatedly, but talking it out at the racetrack before they go home, not letting it simmer. I think that's best for both of their playoff efforts, because that's what's lost in this whole deal, is both drivers are still locked into the round of 12. Now let's talk about the round of 12 for just a moment. The four drivers that are going home after the first three playoff races are Michael McDowell, not too surprising, Tyler Reddick, unfortunately, his playoff debut comes to an early end, Eric Almirola, who struggled through much of the regular season, but thought he had a good shot in this first round, a lot of good tracks for him, but just missed it tonight, had some issues that they had to overcome, and Kurt Busch, which was very disappointing because they showed speed. All of Chip Ganassi had been fast the last few weeks, but they just completely whiffed on the setup tonight, ran outside of the top 20 most of the race, and that's just not good enough. They didn't have to be perfect tonight, they just needed a solid top 10 effort. They were in a little bit of a hole after cutting a tire last week at Richmond, but they could have escaped tonight with just a decent run. They would have been okay, but they completely missed it. We're out off the lead lap almost the entire second half of this race, so really puzzling end to Kurt Busch's season, unfortunately, and a puzzling end to his Chip Ganassi Racing and Chevrolet tenures. He'll be joining 23XI Racing next year, so those are the four drivers eliminated, which means, yes, somehow, some way, all four Hendrick cars advanced to the next round. All four Hendrick cars have advanced, all four Gibbs cars have advanced, all three Penske cars have advanced. And then there's Kevin Harvick holding down the fort for Stewart-Haas Racing, as he's done all season long, and you could argue for much of his SHR career. We'll look at how all these drivers finished in just a moment, but for now, here is how the points will reset beginning next weekend at Las Vegas, the round of 12. Kyle Larson still by far has the most playoff points, and he added to his total with a stage win and a race win tonight, so he's of course at the very top, but a lot of Hendrick and Joe Gibbs Racing cars not far behind. Well, actually it is pretty far behind, and actually it's mostly Joe Gibbs cars. Truex, Busch, and Hamlin all there in the top 5. Ryan Blaney still sneaky, but surely being close to the lead. Cred to Brad Keselowski, Christopher Bell. Keselowski has not been fast, at least not consistently, really all summer long. And then Christopher Bell, this is his first ever playoff appearance this season. And to make it to the round of 12, I know he's in a Joe Gibbs Racing car, but that's still a noteworthy accomplishment. But yes, those are how the points will reset going into Las Vegas next weekend. We'll talk about that more later this week. But for now, let's look at the top finishers and discuss, again, what went wrong and what went right for some of the key drivers tonight. I haven't really touched on him yet, but yes, Kyle Larson wins tonight amidst all of the chaos. We haven't even really scratched the surface of all the crazy things that happened in the closing laps of this one. But Kyle Larson gets the win. That's his 6th points-paying win of the season. It's really hard to say who had the dominant car tonight. I thought Denny Hamlin was better than Larson, at least on the short run, until he made contact with Larson. It was Hamlin's fault. He got tight or something on exit and bumped into Larson's left rear and cut his right front down. But Hamlin, I thought for at least a period late in this race, was as good or better than Kyle Larson, but he obviously didn't get the finish to show for it. Some of the other Gibbs cars had top 5 speed, like Kyle Busch late in the race snuck in there. Martin Truex Jr. started up front and faded pretty quickly, but he was still in the top 10, so was Christopher Bell. Penske looked decent at times. Blaney was up in the top 5. Keselowski was in the top 5 for a lot of this race. The other Hendrick cars were good. Chase Elliott was up near the front, obviously, until he got into it with Kevin Harvick. You see Byron ended up in the top 5. Blaney was up in the top 5 for much of the evening as well. So there was a variety of drivers that sniffed the lead at some point or another tonight. It's hard to say any one driver really dominated. Hamlin won a stage, Larson won a stage, and Larson obviously won the race. So the 5 and the 11 continue their rivalry in these playoffs. But credit where credit is due. William Byron and Alex Bowman came into this race race on the wrong side of the cut line. William Byron was, 18, 19 points out coming into tonight. He needed to collect stage points in the stages and he needed to finish in the top 5. That's what I said earlier in the week. That's exactly what he did tonight. He collected some stage points, especially stage 2. He stayed out on older tires and actually passed cars on older tires, finished 4th in stage 2. That was huge. Nearly every point counted at the end of this thing. So 3rd place effort, clutch performance for William Byron. Really impressed me tonight. And Alex Bowman, who again tonight was probably the 4th fastest of the 4 Hendrick cars, but even he kept his nose clean, ran a complete race, and found himself in the top 5 late. Took advantage of, Kyle Busch having issues late, Christopher Bell having issues late, Hamlin having issues late, Elliott having issues. He took advantage of some of those issues to gain a couple extra spots in the closing laps, but still, he managed to have a top 10 run tonight, snuck into the top 5 late. That's what you gotta do to advance. I mean, these Hendrick cars, Byron with a win and a lot of great regular season standing finish, so a ton of playoff points for Byron, 3 wins during the regular season for Bowman, a lot of playoff points for him. All those two needed to do in this first round was not have 2 bad races in a row. They both had issues at Darlington, of course. Last week, Byron was just way off the pace for whatever reason, so tonight they needed to be good, and they were. So credit where credit is due. Clutch performance for the 2 young Hendrick drivers. But on the flip side of that, Eric Almirola's team was not clutch tonight. Well, no, actually the pit crew was very clutch. Early in this race, they had an oil leak. They went in and replaced an entire oil line under caution at Bristol, of all places, a short track, and avoided going a lap down. So their season nearly ended early in this race, but they kept their driver in contention by being very quick, very efficient on pit road. So the pit crew deserves a round of applause, but they got behind on the setups or something. That final run or final 2 runs of the race, Almirola, I believe, radioed his crew telling him it was the worst the car had been all night long. So they lost the handle on it. They had a top 10 car early on. That was going to be enough for them to advance. They fell out of it late. It was really sad, unfortunately, to watch, knowing that he just needed 1 or 2 passes, needed to make 1 or 2 gains for position to lock himself in, and he just couldn't do it. The car would not let him. So that played obviously into William Byron and Alex Bowman's favor. Kurt Busch, I already talked about him. They missed the setup tonight. I don't really know what else to say. They just were slow. I don't think Kurt Busch himself was doing anything wrong. He's really good at Bristol. We know that. They just missed it, and there was only so much they could do. They ended up finishing 19th. Tyler Reddick got some stage points early in this race. He was doing what he needed to do to at least keep some pressure on the cut line. Thought he had a top 10 car, and I think he did by the end of this race, but they could not overcome all the track position they lost from at the end of stage 2, I believe. They had to pit an extra time because of a loose wheel, didn't get all the lug nuts tight. Really difficult to come back from all that. They even went a lap down briefly in stage 3. Got back on the lead lap, rallied at the end, but came up just like 2 points short. So shout out to Tyler Reddick, first ever playoff appearance for the sophomore year driver. Could have been a whole lot worse. Certainly did not embarrass himself in these playoffs. I think they'll be back next year and will be just as, if not stronger, this time next season. And I can't say much else about Michael McDowell. He was in a kind of a desperate must-win scenario coming into tonight. Nobody thought that was realistic, and he ran outside the top 15, outside the top 20 most of the evening. So there are your top finishers once again. I'll mention a couple of drivers. Kyle Busch late in this race had a flat tire. It was terrifying for a moment because NBCSN had the cut line, the live scoring on the side, and the points for Kyle Busch just begin to bottom out dramatically. Plus 24 to plus 20, plus 15, plus 10, plus 7, plus 2. Oh my gosh, Kyle Busch fans were sweating heavily for a few seconds there. It was the final countdown. But he survived. Christopher Bell got damaged and cut a tire down late, and he lost some points but still had enough, banked just enough in the earlier races to still move on. But a couple of Gibbs drivers that probably should have had top 10 or even top 5 runs tonight who had their finishes severely hurt. I don't know who else I'm forgetting. I mean, shout out to some of the non-playoff guys. Eric Jones with an 8th place finish, pretty great. Matt DiBenedetto, who's been good at Bristol in the past, finishes 10th. What a night. What a crazy night. I know this video is very scrambled. My head is going all sorts of different directions all at once. That's, I guess, both the charm and sometimes the problem with these post-race reactions is I literally just turned off my TV in the other room, sat down, turned on the lights, turned on the camera, hit record, and now we're off to the races. So everything's coming back to me all at once. This is very much a stream of consciousness type reaction video, but let's just talk about this race for a moment. We did a whole live show last night, late last night, reacting to the crazy Xfinity race finish, Allmendinger and Cindric wrecking across the finish line. Nutty stuff, Bristol stuff. I didn't think there was any way last night's finish, or really the whole race last night, the Xfinity race was fantastic. I didn't think there was any way that could be topped. And I don't think today's race necessarily topped it because 500 miles, well not 500 miles, 500 laps. A lot of them were, just good, decent racing, but nothing super thrilling or shocking happening. But those final, I don't know how many laps it was. Let's say 30 or 40 laps. This race fit like 3 races worth of action inside of 40 laps. And 40 laps at Bristol, that's like 10 minutes of real-time action. My head is still spinning a little bit. I tweeted like the dizzy Mr. Krabs meme where he's just like, oh my goodness, because that's exactly how I felt in the closing stretch. I mentioned that at the very top of the show, but NBCSN, with just a few laps to go, had 3 different windows open on the screen. They had the live leaderboard followed by the live playoff leaderboard. They had so much information being thrown at the audience because that's how much action, that's how much was happening, that's how fast things were changing on track. I mean, credit to NBCSN in that respect. They had a lot of information to go through in a short period of time, and I thought they did a pretty good job catching all the drivers who had tire issues, following the pass for the lead, Harvick versus Larson, Almirola trying to make it in, Tyler Reddick trying to make it in, Byron Bowman trying to hold him off. Like, there was so much going on at the end of this race. I didn't think there was any way we could see it all. I don't think there was. I mean, again, 3 windows on screen. They probably needed 5 or 6 to really capture the full picture of what was going on. Man, I'm jealous of the fans that were there in the stands tonight. This was a phenomenal finish. This is what the playoffs are built for. This is what Bristol is built for. Let's be honest. I was happy, or I was, let's say, maybe not happy, but willing at least to see them turn the first Bristol race into a dirt track because attendance was down for the spring date. I get it. But this weekend, between the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup race, and I even throw the ARCA race in there. The ARCA race had some memorable, sketchy moments even. I know I'm only 23 years old, but I've watched a lot of Bristol races. I've seen many of the classic great Bristol races from the 90s and earlier even. I know I'm young, but I've seen a lot of great Bristol races. This might be the best all-around weekend of racing this track has ever seen. The one and only concrete Bristol date of the season for all 3-4 series really completely delivered. Bristol is the best track. I've been saying that for years. This weekend just proved it. If there are any Bristol doubters out there, I don't see how this race weekend doesn't convert you. Yeah, we tore up some equipment. Yeah, we dinged up some sheet metal. Yeah, drivers were angry at each other. You had sweaty Kevin Harvick in Chase Elliott's face on pit road. But let's be honest, that's NASCAR. I don't want to see equipment get tore up every week. I understand it's expensive for teams, especially for small teams. It's not sustainable to wreck tons of cars week in, week out. But look around at every other major motorsport. Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsports, the biggest motorsport worldwide at least, and they don't have anything on their schedule that looks like Bristol. A little spaghetti bowl there of action. IndyCar, biggest open wheel series in the United States, doesn't have anything quite like Bristol. Like, these series all have their own charm and stuff. The World of Outlaws dirt racing, fantastic stuff. Sprint car racing, dirt modified stuff, anything on dirt, great stuff. But no other major motorsport comes close to putting on the show that NASCAR does at Bristol. With the high banked, fast, edge of your seat, edge of control action, drivers running into each other's door and it being kind of deemed acceptable. Not much give, a whole lot of take. Now with current Bristol, you have a couple different grooves. It changes throughout the evening. Close, dramatic finishes almost every single time we come here. The media landscape, the sports landscape, the motorsports landscape is extremely crowded these days. NASCAR needs to find ways to set itself apart. Bristol this weekend was a shining example of how NASCAR sets itself apart from other motorsports and highlights all of the most spectacular, best, unique qualities stock car racing has to offer. This was a fantastic weekend. I love Bristol with all of my heart. This was a fun race. It was a crazy finish. It was dramatic. Drivers, it meant something to the drivers. Harvick, man, like I said, he looked like he was in his youth again, in his prime. I mean, he's still pretty much in his prime. He's still really, really good. But you know what I'm saying? He looked rejuvenated tonight because he saw a win. He hasn't won a race now in a full calendar year. He saw a win right out of his windshield, and he felt like he got it taken away by the Hendrick drivers. Like, that passion is what NASCAR needs. That emotion is what NASCAR needs more of, and sometimes that's what NASCAR, I think, does best. So tonight was a fantastic race. Let's put this thing on the groovy gauge. I'll be honest, I can't judge this race completely objectively. I mean, if I just focus on the on-track action, it was a very good race, probably in the 80, 85, maybe as high as 90% because the finish was really crazy and dramatic, and the finish is the most important part of the race, let's be honest. But I got to factor in all the other extenuating circumstances. The points battle, the battle for the win, the rivalry and the drama between Elliott, Harvick, and throw Larson in there at the end, the altercation after the race, the way this race will be remembered for decades to come. This is a perfect score. This is a 100% on the groovy gauge. I don't know how you get any groovier than this. I'm pumped. I literally don't know know how to put my thoughts into words right now because I'm just that amped up right now. 2 nights in a row between last night's Xfinity finish and tonight's Cup finish. I'm just, like Kevin Harvick, I'll rip someone's head off. Maybe not actually, because I'm not angry. I'm just excited. I might accidentally rip my head off in excitement. Oh, geez. I need to baby-proof this room because I'm afraid I'm going to run into a wall and hurt myself. That's how amped up I am. I don't have any other way to put it. It's just... Ever since my driver, Matt Kenseth, retired from full-time action, and I really don't count 2020 because there was really no point last season, aside from Indianapolis where I thought he had a chance of winning, but since my guy, the guy I grew up with, the guy I supported, rain or shine, good or bad, no matter what, ever since he retired, effectively after 2017, it's hard for me to get that pumped up, that invested in the finish of a race, but tonight was one of the few nights that I felt as energized, as enthused as ever, and my all-time favorite driver was not in the field, so that tells you how good this race was. 100%. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm sure Elliott and Harvick fans are going to have very different ideas of this finish. Boy, I know this is one of the most scrambled all over the place out of the groove race reviews of all time, but I appreciate you all bearing with me. Thank you all so much for watching. That's going to do it. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. We'll have a lot to talk about this coming week. I'm sure you're not going to want to miss it. Also, some exciting things to announce. That'll be coming very soon. Thank you as always to my amazing Patreon supporters as well. Yeah, like I teased, some pretty neat stuff to announce here in the coming days. Look forward to that. I will see you all this coming week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, y'all. It is in fact Bristol, baby. No other way to say it. Speaks for itself. What a race. Thanks for watching.